In Lima, the capital of Peru, Stephanie Flores set off on the 30th of May 2010 to a poker tournament at the Atlantic City Casino. She was an experienced player and had recently won a large sum, $10,000, which is why she was convinced of her abilities. Before her departure, she told her father that she would be back in a few days, but no one ever saw her again. Stephanie lived with her father. Her family enjoyed great respect in society. Ricardo Flores, her father, was not only a racing driver but also ran for the office of Peruvian president. In their large family, there were 5 children, 4 sons, and Stephanie, the youngest. Despite their high social standing and good financial situation, the Flores family remained modest and friendly and led a normal life. Stephanie's brothers were involved in event management. She herself studied business administration in her 3rd year at the University of Lima and helped her brothers in business. In addition, she was a successful gambler, which brought her a good income. When Stephanie did not return after the tournament, Ricardo began to worry. Such behavior was completely atypical for his daughter, who had always distinguished herself through responsibility and punctuality. The worried father called his sons and asked for help. The brothers also could not reach Stephanie. They began calling all acquaintances of the missing person, but no one knew where she was. After unsuccessful searches in the surrounding area, the father turned to the police. The investigators went to the hotel where the poker tournament took place to speak with the staff. The employees could not say where one of the participants had gone. The investigators requested the surveillance videos and began analyzing them. On the recordings from the hallway by the conference room, they noticed that Stephanie joined a young man in light clothing who was already sitting at the table around 3 o'clock at night on the 30th of May. During the tournament, they conversed amicably and left the hall together around 5 o'clock in the morning. The hotel staff remembered seeing them together. The unknown man made a pleasant impression. One of the employees noticed his external resemblance to Brad Pitt. This is how he remained in memory. When reviewing further recordings, the investigators saw how Stephanie and the young man entered room 309 at 5:16 in the morning. Shortly after, he went out and came back with coffee and pastries. 3 hours and 20 minutes after their first appearance in the room, the young man left it with a backpack and did not return again. When he left, he instructed the hotel staff not to disturb the resident in the room, and the employees followed this until the authorities arrived. The investigators decided to check the condition of the young woman, but when the room door opened, they faced a disturbing situation. In the room, Stephanie Flores was found. The investigators discovered a tennis racket which they classified as important evidence. The medical examination revealed severe injuries to the head and neck area. According to the experts, the trauma from the blunt object was the decisive factor in this story. Now the investigators had to determine the reasons for what had happened. A possible motive could have been the theft of valuables. All the young woman's financial means, cards and jewelry were missing. Stephanie had about $15,000 with her. After examining the crime scene, the police already knew the person involved, the same unknown man from the surveillance recordings. The investigations revealed that room 309 was booked to Joran van der Sloot, a Dutch citizen. The law enforcement officers began collecting information about this man and discovered disturbing facts. It turned out that he was wanted internationally and his name was connected to a mysterious story. Joran van der Sloot had long attracted the attention of investigators in connection with the mysterious disappearance of American Natalie Holloway on the island of Aruba on the 30th of May 2005. This information caused particular concern among law enforcement agencies who suspected his possible involvement in other incidents as well. The police had to find this dangerous man as quickly as possible. While the search was running, the investigators examined the files about Natalie Holloway's disappearance. Natalie was born on the 21st of October 1986 in Clinton, Mississippi. She was the first child in the family. After the parents divorced, the children stayed with the mother but maintained a close relationship with the father. Later, Natalie's mother started a new family with a successful businessman. and they moved into his house in Mountain Brook, Alabama. Natalie showed excellent performance in school, was interested in cheerleading and dancing, and graduated from school with very good grades. With a full scholarship, she was admitted to university. But a trip changed everything. Natalie went on vacation to the Caribbean island of Aruba. The island of Aruba is a territory of the Netherlands and part of the Dutch Caribbean. This island is known for its safety and is considered one of the most peaceful in the region. In May 2005, the school organized a trip for graduates. 124 students came to the island accompanied by 11 teachers. They were accommodated in the comfortable Holiday Inn hotel. It is worth mentioning that on Aruba, the consumption of certain beverages is allowed from 18 years of age. Each vacation day followed a similar pattern. The vacationers entertained themselves, sunbathed on the beach, and swam. After lunch, some rested in their rooms. In the evening, everyone met for dinner and then went to the hotel bar, where they tried various cocktails. The 29th of May 2005 was their last day on the island. Natalie packed her things like the others and placed her passport next to the suitcase before going to dinner. After dinner, part of the group continued the entertainment. Others returned to their rooms to sleep before departure. In the morning, when everyone gathered in the lobby of the Holiday Inn to check out and depart for the airport, the teachers noticed the absence of one person. During the morning group check, the absence of Natalie Holloway was noted. No one knew of her whereabouts. The teachers called her room, suspecting she might have overslept, but there was no answer. Together with a hotel employee, they opened the room and found it empty. Natalie's luggage and documents were still in place. The hotel staff and teachers organized a search throughout the entire resort grounds, but without success. Around 11 o'clock in the morning, one of the teachers contacted Natalie's mother and informed her about the situation. She inquired whether the young woman might have gone somewhere independently. The mother categorically rejected this possibility and expressed her concern about a possible incident. After reporting to the police, the search actions continued with the participation of law enforcement officers. Meanwhile, the main group returned home with some teachers. The worried mother contacted her husband and Natalie's biological father. Together, they immediately flew with the next flight from the neighboring city to the island. She also informed emergency 911 and the FBI about the incident. After their arrival on Aruba, the relatives immediately participated in the search, questioned hotel guests and vacationers at the resort. They distributed photos of Natalie and worked actively with the investigations. In the course of the investigations, it turned out that Natalie had not returned to her room on the last night. The casino visitors, who were located next to the hotel, noticed how Natalie conversed with a tall young man of European appearance from the Netherlands. In their opinion, she might have left with him. When the establishment closed at 1 o'clock at night, the staff saw how the young woman got into a grey Honda in which 3 young men were located. The security personnel knew these frequent casino guests well: the Dutchman Joran van der Sloot and the brothers Deepak and Satish Kalpo. The verification of the surveillance camera recordings confirmed the employees' statements. The staff noticed that the young Dutchman frequently appeared in the casino, where, according to their observations, he tried to meet wealthy female tourists in order to gain financial advantages from them. Joran lived with his parents on the island, who belonged to a respected circle. His father worked in the legal field and was preparing for a judge position. The young man himself showed great promise in sports and studies. A successful football career was predicted for him. Recently, however, his behavior had changed. He spent much time in bars and casinos. All evidence pointed to the young Dutchman. Therefore, the parents, together with the law enforcement officers, made their way to him to obtain clarification. In front of the house stood the same grey Honda in which Natalie was last seen. When the law enforcement officers explained to Joran's father the reason for their visit, he informed them that his son was in the casino of another hotel. The police officers hurried there, but Joran was already nowhere to be found. During the search, his father called and said the son had returned home with his friend Deepak. The officers who arrived decided to question the friends separately. Their stories not only differed from each other, but also constantly changed. Initially, both insisted they had never met Natalie. However, when they were shown the surveillance footage on which they were conversing with the young woman, Joran suddenly remembered the encounter that evening. According to his words, after the casino game, Natalie suggested going to a club. He agreed and invited Deepak and his brother Satish. Together they drove there by car. Afterwards, Joran claimed they had brought him to the hotel and had not seen the young woman again. However, the police already knew that this story was fabricated. They had evaluated all camera recordings and were certain that Natalie had not appeared at the hotel again. During the investigation, the suspects were arrested several times for false statements, but had to be released without charges due to lack of solid evidence. During the interrogations, their story changed. Now they said that after the club they had driven to the lighthouse to observe sharks, and afterwards had gone to Arashi Beach. Joran told that his friends had driven away and left them alone together. Finally, he had left alone, with the justification that he had to go to class early while the young woman wanted to stay and continue partying. She had allegedly given him permission to leave herself. Joran insisted he had nothing to do with her disappearance, but admitted that he now regretted his decision to leave her alone. According to his statements, it had only remained at kissing. No further actions had taken place. However, his friends told a different version. The Dutchman had behaved dishonorably toward the young woman and left her at the beach. The investigators thoroughly examined the mentioned beach but found no traces of Natalie's presence. A new clue was provided by a gardener from the neighboring hotel. He reported that he had seen 3 young men, Joran, Deepak and Satish, who had done something on a vacant lot at the pond that night. The law enforcement officers arrived at the specified location and examined the area, but without success. Time passed, but there was no significant progress in the case. The relatives were dissatisfied with the investigators' work and criticized their unprofessionalism. The family was convinced that Joran was involved in the incident and that more pressure should be exerted on him to obtain a confession, which the police did not do. The family offered a considerable reward, $100,000 for information about Natalie's whereabouts and $1 million for her safe return home. The residents constantly called with their theories hoping to receive the reward, but all calls proved to be useless. The law enforcement agencies criticized the parents' approach and were of the opinion that the offered reward only hindered the investigation. Meanwhile, the parents continued their active search. They distributed information sheets, hung up posters and participated in search operations. The authorities of Aruba were of the opinion that the Holloway family was exerting excessive pressure by demanding the arrest of the suspects before sufficient evidence was gathered. At some point, the Calpo brothers informed the authorities that Joran's father had helped hide evidence. The man was arrested but released after 3 days due to lack of evidence. The story of Natalie's disappearance attracted great attention in the American media, which worried the authorities of Aruba. After all, their main income came from tourists from the USA. The case received attention mainly through Natalie's parents, who persistently sought justice and tried to advance the investigation. Joran also did not remain inactive. He willingly gave paid interviews to American television stations, in which he reported about his meeting with Natalie and the events of that night. The young man insisted that he had nothing to do with the incident. After 1 year, Joran returned to the Netherlands and continued his studies. In interviews with local media, he claimed that they had tried to pin something on him. According to his statements, he left Natalie at the beach and went home. 2 years after the incident, Joran published a book together with a journalist in which he detailed his version of the events. In this way, he could make a good profit from this story and the resulting commotion. After the persistent requests from Natalie's family, the law enforcement agencies conducted a thorough search of Joran's property on the island of Aruba. They examined the house and the surrounding grounds but found nothing significant for the investigation. The development of events was closely followed in many countries, especially in the USA, Aruba, and the Netherlands. Joran was at the center of public attention, and the public was divided into two camps. Some considered him involved in Natalie's disappearance. Others believed in his innocence. 3 years after Natalie's disappearance, new information emerged. A witness reported that he had seen Joran and his father near a pond at 4 o'clock in the morning that night. According to his statements, the young man had run to a fast food restaurant, and sometime later the two men had driven away in a red Jeep. A second clue was the statement from Joran's former girlfriend. She informed the police that the Dutchman had said a strange sentence about the beach and its possibilities one night, which had very much disturbed her. Despite many clues, new information and contradictory statements from the suspects, the local investigators were of the opinion that the collected evidence was not sufficient for filing charges. The proceedings against Joran, Deepak and Satish were discontinued. As representatives of the law enforcement agencies announced, the investigation can only be resumed if new information emerges. In the year 2008, material emerged that was recorded by a Dutch journalist with a hidden camera. On the video, Joran told his version of the events that night at the beach with Natalie. According to his words, the young woman suddenly felt unwell after their intimacy and she showed no more signs of life. Thereupon he turned to his friends for help, and they drove out to the open sea with a boat. Later, another recording emerged, in which he spoke with clear satisfaction about the fact that no traces of the incident had been found. Otherwise, he would have gotten serious problems. He also hinted at help from someone in this situation. Astonishingly, all these confessions had no consequences for him. The law enforcement agencies of Aruba did not consider his video confession credible and declared it insufficient for court proceedings. For a complete investigation, material evidence was needed, which they did not have. In their opinion, Joran only strove for fame and financial gain by inventing different stories. For a time, Joran was in a psychiatric facility on his own initiative. Later, he moved to Bangkok, where he acquired a small cafe with the funds from interviews and publications and devoted himself to entrepreneurship. In the same year, another media representative met with Joran in Thailand. In the conversation, he shared shocking information about his involvement in illegal activities. His actions appeared strange and unpredictable. After this conversation, he got into trouble with the local authorities. The police began checking his statements about illegal activities. As a result, he had to leave the country hastily and leave behind his business and his savings. Shortly afterwards, his father suffered a heart attack, and Joran considered himself the cause of this incident. He ended up in a psychiatric clinic again due to his emotional state. After discharge, Joran was confronted with financial difficulties and devised a new method to get money. In the year 2019, a representative of the Holloway family reported an unusual offer. An anonymous person had contacted him and demanded $250,000 for information about Natalie Holloway. He insisted on an advance of $25,000. The investigation revealed that Joran had sent the messages. Natalie's father agreed to a meeting on the island of Aruba and handed over the demanded advance. This time, Joran told a new version of the events. According to his words, an accident happened that evening. Natalie wanted to leave. He let her go, but she stumbled and fell. Afterwards, he had allegedly turned to his father, and they had hidden the traces of the incident in the foundation of a house under construction. Joran insisted on his innocence and showed a concrete location. However, the verification proved the falseness of these statements. Natalie's parents worked together with the FBI and collected material against the Dutchman, at least for fraud and extortion. After the charges were filed, Joran fled to Peru, where the story with Stephanie Flores occurred. On the 3rd of June 2010, Joran's former girlfriend informed the police about his whereabouts. It turned out that he had asked her for money for a plane ticket, but she decided to help the investigation. Joran was arrested in Chile. During the arrest, the police officers noticed traces of the incident on Joran's clothing. Apparently, he had been in a hurry to flee and had no time to put himself in order. He was brought to Peru, where he was charged with the disappearance of Stephanie Flores. During the first interrogation, he denied any involvement. According to his statements, armed robbers had broken into the hotel room, taken valuables, and attacked the young woman, while he managed to escape. However, the investigators quickly refuted this version. After 4 days, Joran changed his statement. According to his words, they were having a peaceful conversation in the room until Stephanie discovered information about the Natalie Holloway case and his possible involvement in her disappearance on his laptop. He tried to explain that it was a misunderstanding, but she became frightened and did not believe him. After the unpleasant conversation, the situation got out of control. Joran claimed he regretted what had happened and explained his actions with alcohol influence and fear of Stephanie's possible report to the police. According to his words, he acted impulsively and lost self-control. However, the investigators stuck to a simpler version. They suspected that the disappearance of money and valuables from the room was the motive. The absence of Stephanie's personal belongings spoke in favor of this version. Aware that he faced a long prison sentence in Peru, Joran tried to negotiate with the investigators. He offered to reveal the location of evidence in the Natalie Holloway case in exchange for dropping the charges, but his offer was rejected. The trial began, and all evidence pointed to his involvement. The proceedings went fairly quickly. The prosecutor presented surveillance footage showing how Joran entered the room with Stephanie and later left alone. Traces were found on his hand, and the investigation proved his DNA on the found evidence. The defense had nothing to counter this, which is why Joran made a confession on the advice of his lawyer. The jurist promised that the sentence would not exceed 15 years. However, the court sentenced him to 28 years in prison and obligated him to pay Stephanie's family compensation of $75,000. In the year 2014, Joran met the 33-year-old Peruvian accountant Lady Figueroa in prison, who sold sweets and cigarettes there. A relationship developed between them, and they soon married. The couple had a daughter, whom they named Trudy Vandersloot in honor of Joran's grandmother. Thanks to the relaxed rules, his wife visited him twice a week and described him as a very kind person. But in the year 2020, Joran decided to separate from her in favor of 24-year-old Eva, with whom he conducted illegal trade in prohibited substances in prison. After this discovery, Joran received an additional 7 years in prison for trafficking in prohibited substances. He was transferred to a high-security facility where visits are prohibited. Nevertheless, he continues to correspond with Eva and other women. Official charges were never brought against Joran in the case of Natalie Holloway's disappearance. The case remains unsolved, although the relatives are convinced of Joran's involvement in the young woman's disappearance. Natalie's relatives suspect that she became the next target of their fraud scheme. In their opinion, Joran tried to swindle money from her. They may have initially had other plans, but something did not go according to plan. Presumably, Natalie refused to give up the money, and their fraud attempt failed. After the argument, the perpetrators could have disposed of the evidence in the ocean, where predatory fish live. The Holloway family was strengthened in their assumptions after the case of Stephanie, whom Joran had also met in the casino. The similarity of circumstances in both stories seemed to be no coincidence. Originally, the Peruvian authorities planned to hand Joran Vandersloot over to the American side only after he had served his sentence in the Stephanie Flores case. In May, however, the situation changed. The Peruvian authorities agreed to a temporary transfer of Vandersloot to the USA to examine the accusations, after which he should be brought back. This decision was made due to the advanced age of the main witnesses, who cannot wait several more years. Joran tried through his lawyer to challenge the extradition decision by citing the lack of prior notification, but was rejected. At the end of May 2023, Vandersloot was attacked by other inmates in the Peruvian prison. At the beginning of June, FBI agents arrived with a special aircraft to pick him up. On the 8th of June 2023, Joran Vandersloot arrived in the USA. He was brought to the Birmingham prison, not far from Natalie Holloway's hometown. Nothing has been announced yet about the beginning of the court proceedings. The incident with the young, expectant mother triggered a shockwave throughout the entire city and forced residents to stay at home. The subsequent investigations revealed a shocking truth. This incident was a link in a chain of mysterious events of recent times. Although the investigators managed to arrest several participants in the crime, many circumstances are still shrouded in mysteries. The experienced investigators working on this case are increasingly coming to a disturbing conclusion. Whoever is behind everything continues his dangerous game unnoticed. Despite all police efforts, the most important questions remain unanswered, and the evidence suggests that the story is far from over. In the small town of Muskegon in the state of Michigan, Amanda Blackburn's story began in 1987. She spent her youth in Indianapolis until the family decided to move to neighboring Acre in 1995. Amanda's educational path first led her to the Christian Academy in Elkhart, which she successfully completed in 2006. After that, she continued her studies in Florida at the Christian College of Pensacola. Their fate gave her a special gift in 2008, the meeting with a young man named Davy Blackburn. Their acquaintance was extremely romantic, through a mutual friend who arranged a blind date. They spent the first evening at a Christian music concert, which became the beginning of their beautiful story. An immediate special connection arose between the young people, and they began dating. Davy, who was a theology student and preparing to become a pastor, shared with Amanda a deep faith in God. Their relationship developed over several years at a distance, which brought certain difficulties. But they feared no obstacles and worked together to strengthen their connection. The couple approached building their relationship very seriously and even sought advice from a family counselor. People in their environment noticed Amanda's extraordinary kindness, her bright soul, and her big heart. Acquaintances often spoke about how harmoniously the two complemented each other in their shared life, love, faith, and complete mutual understanding united. Amanda and Davy created a truly happy connection based on sincere feelings and shared values. This couple's story began with their wedding on the 1st of August 2008. The newlyweds Davy and Amanda decided to settle in South Carolina, where he worked as a pastor at New Spring Church. Their life was full of plans and dreams for the future. 4 years later, in 2012, they moved to Indianapolis. There, the spouses founded their own church that focused on working with the young generation. Soon their family grew. Son Weston was born. Not a year later, Amanda learned of her second pregnancy. She always radiated kindness and warmth, created a cozy home, and cared for her loved ones. But fate had other plans. The morning of the 10th of November 2015 began as usual. Davy woke up at 4:30 and set off around 6 o'clock for his usual training at the local fitness studio. Amanda stayed home with the child. According to his statements, he left the entrance door unlocked. The training lasted about an hour and ended at 7:10. On the way home, Davy spoke on the phone with a friend and became absorbed in the conversation. When he arrived home at 7:30, he decided not to go in immediately so as not to disturb Amanda and Weston while sleeping. He stayed in the car and continued the phone conversation. Only at 8:20, after ending the call, did Davy enter the house through the front door. In the living room, he found the 28-year-old Amanda lying motionless on the floor. Her clothing appeared strangely disheveled. The sight made the man freeze. When he came to his senses, he first set out to search for his son. Arriving on the first floor, he was relieved to find that Weston was sleeping peacefully and unharmed in his crib. Immediately afterward, Davy dialed the emergency number 911. When the rescue workers arrived at the house, Amanda was in critical condition. The paramedics immediately took her to the hospital. An important detail was that the young woman was in the 12th week of pregnancy. The doctors did everything possible and connected all available medical equipment. Unfortunately, despite all the medics' efforts, on the next day, the 11th of November, neither Amanda nor her unborn child could be saved. When examining the crime scene, the forensic technicians found Amanda's personal items scattered on the kitchen table: credit cards, wallet, and handbag. There also lay a pack of cigars that, according to Davy's statement, belonged to no one in the family. Neither he nor his wife had this habit. Near Amanda's discovery site lay an overturned lamp. The situation in the house indicated a serious confrontation. In the emergency call to 911, Dave reported his wife's injury. The medical examination revealed that the injury was caused by the use of a firearm. The experts documented 3 injuries: in the area of the lower left arm, the upper back, and in the occipital region. All these details indicated that Amanda had resisted. No signs of a special assault were found. In the investigators' opinion, the perpetrator might have had such intentions, but something prevented their implementation. The specialists thoroughly examined every corner of the house. Near the crime scene, biological samples were taken. Additionally, the experts secured skin particles under Amanda's fingernails for further examination. In the living room, the investigators found a roll of electrical tape and headphones. They could become important evidence in the investigations. The investigators found Amanda's mobile phone in her room. A bank notification came at 7:53. Unusual card activity. Someone had withdrawn money at the ATM. When checking her wallet, it turned out the said bank card was missing. The subsequent events brought clarity to the incident. That morning, several disturbing calls came in from the neighborhood where Amanda and Davy lived. On the 10th of November at 5:23 in the morning, Amanda's neighbor reported the incident in her apartment to emergency services. According to the woman's statement, she was awakened by noise around 4:30. When she noticed that her phone had disappeared from the bedroom, she went to check the apartment and could still see how unknown persons were leaving the building through the glass door. When looking through, she missed a laptop, a bag, and keys. The apartment was ransacked, houseplants overturned. Later it turned out that a car had also disappeared from the parking lot. The intruders had used the keys found in the apartment. This information aroused the investigators' interest. When reviewing the surveillance footage from the crime scene, they saw how 2 unknown persons broke in while a third waited at the entrance. Noteworthy is that during the incident itself, the camera was deactivated. At 8:17, another emergency call came in, this time from a resident of the same street where Amanda and Davy lived. He too reported uninvited visitors. This neighbor had also installed a camera, but it was switched off at 5:36, which made no usable recordings possible. The list of missing items was unusual. Besides 4 televisions, a laptop, a Tiffany pearl necklace, and a pink pullover, a remote control was missing. Since there were no surveillance cameras near Amanda's house, the investigators had to proceed differently. They began with door-to-door questioning in the neighborhood and inquired with residents about unusual occurrences that morning. Their efforts paid off. One resident shared important information. About an hour before 7 in the morning, he noticed a suspicious passerby in a black hooded sweatshirt who carefully hid his face under the hood. This person moved in the immediate vicinity of Amanda's residence. Another eyewitness confirmed that he had also seen a stranger who was walking down the street talking loudly on the phone. Around 7 o'clock, a third witness observed a strange scene. An unknown person coupled a foreign vehicle to his car and drove away with it. Fortunately, this moment was recorded by a street camera. Another neighbor shared disturbing observations. When she was at home around 6:40, she heard 2 loud noises that sounded like bangs, followed by a female outcry. Naturally, Amanda's husband initially came under suspicion. However, he stated that he had been at the fitness center at that time. The investigators had to verify his statement. They went to the sports club to verify Davy's presence there. His presence at the studio was confirmed. His environment described Davy exclusively positively: a worthy pastor, an exemplary family father. The relatives categorically rejected the possibility of his involvement in domestic conflicts. The officers cleared the husband. In parallel, They began searching for the driven-away car in the hope that this trail would lead to clarification. The vehicle was found quite quickly. It stood at the roadside not far from Amanda's house. When examining the interior, an ATM receipt was noticed that was found on the floor of the passenger side. The document showed a failed transaction at 6:36 in the morning. The last digits of the card on the receipt matched Amanda's card number. This discovery confirmed the connection between all incidents. Apparently, Amanda had accidentally encountered an intruder at home who originally only wanted to steal valuables. The investigations revealed that several persons were involved in this incident. This was confirmed by surveillance recordings from the house that was broken into. An interesting find was a pink women's pullover that was discovered on the driver's seat of the confiscated vehicle. When searching the trunk of this car, a remote control, a green men's pullover size 20XL, a bedding set, and a bag of oranges were found. The experts took samples from the pullover and various places in the vehicle interior. In the course of the investigations, it turned out that the uninvited guests appeared in the house almost immediately after Amanda's husband Dave's departure to the fitness studio. After 30 minutes, someone tried to use the homeowner's bank card. The officers determined the location of the ATM where at 6:36 in the morning, an attempt was made to withdraw $500. When checking the recordings, they noticed an unknown person at the wheel of a silver Chrysler Sebring. The same car was recorded by cameras near Amanda's house. The person at the ATM concealed their face with a pink sweater and a hood. On the recordings from a neighboring ATM, the same unknown person appeared. There they managed to withdraw $400 at 6:54 in the morning. By the 17th of November, the analysis results were available. After a check in the database, a match was found. The data pointed to 21-year-old Jalen Watson. He had only recently been released. On the 6th of August, he was released early from custody for burglary. When examining his social media, the investigators discovered a connection to 24-year-old Diane Gordon. By an amazing coincidence, he too had recently been released on parole for a similar offense. It turned out that they had worked together before. These two became the main suspects in the case. The analysis of their phone data showed that the devices were detected from 4:40 in the morning by a radio tower near the first house that the intruders had broken into. Then the signal moved to a tower near Amanda's place of residence. After that, the phones were registered in the area of the same ATM where the foreign card was used. During the investigation, the officers discovered an additional mobile phone number that moved on the same route that same morning. The owner was the sister of a young man, 18-year-old Larry Taylor Jr. The young man had already had problems with the law. He had previously been charged with inappropriate behavior after an incident with a woman in a parking lot. When the investigators visited Larry's sister, she shared important information. Jalen, Deanne, and her brother were longtime friends who frequently did things together. On the eve of the incident, all three had been in her apartment and left it around 3:30 in the morning on the 10th of November. When examining the premises, the investigators noticed a dark vest. The young woman confirmed that it was Jalen's favorite piece, which he wore that morning. The same piece of clothing was also noticed on the street camera recordings. In addition, the sister handed over to the officers shooting equipment that Jalen or Diane had left under her bed. The device was sent for examination. Later, another witness came forward who wanted to remain anonymous. He reported that he had seen the trio that morning with Larry carrying an object. According to him, Jalen was indeed wearing the dark vest. The informant described in detail how the group broke into the first house. While the homeowner was sleeping, they took the phone and car keys. Being aware of the risk of being discovered, they had previously disabled the surveillance cameras. According to the informant, Larry expressed the intention to take action against the woman, as he feared being caught on cameras or that she might have seen him. But Jalen and Diana talked him out of it, which saved the homeowner from harm, but the group was not satisfied with that. Looking for more loot, they broke into a second house. Dissatisfied with the result, they went to Amanda's apartment. The informant specified that only Larry and Jalen went inside, while Diane waited in the car in the driveway. After thorough investigations, law enforcement arrested 3 suspects: Larry, Jalen, and Diane. Serious charges were brought against each of them. Larry was charged on 13 counts, including unlawful acts, burglary, violations of weapon storage regulations, and property crimes. Jalen was charged with 10 offenses, including burglary and unauthorized use of a vehicle. Diane was also accused of burglary. Initially, the arrested denied their involvement, but the evidence, including DNA analysis, indicated their presence at the crime scene. During the investigation, new circumstances came to light. It turned out that Larry might have been involved in an incident with Rolando Gonzalez Hernandez, a 27-year-old man. Rolando was found with a serious injury next to his car in a residential complex. Witnesses reported to authorities Larry's confession that he had committed a crime in the same residential complex. The incident with Rolando occurred on the 4th of November, a week before the incident with Amanda. Another witness reported that Larry had previously broken into a woman's house and committed unlawful acts under threat of gun violence. Amanda was also found in an alarming condition. This indicated Larry's malicious intentions, but presumably the appearance of Amanda's husband forced the perpetrators to flee hastily from the crime scene. After these revelations, Larry received additional charges in connection with the incident with Rolando and other offenses. After some time, Diane and Jalen decided to cooperate with the investigators. According to the agreement, they were to testify against Larry, whom they considered the most dangerous, in exchange for milder charges. According to their statements, they had originally planned only a theft, but unexpectedly encountered Amanda. Diane and Jalen left the house while Larry remained. He used violence against Amanda, whereupon she lost consciousness. At this moment, he took her bank cards. The accomplices waited in the car. When they saw Amanda's husband's approaching car, they all fled hastily. After that followed irreversible actions by Larry, but his accomplices had already left the crime scene. Later, in his sister's apartment, Larry told his accomplices about the events. According to his words, Amanda regained consciousness and tried to defend herself. He described his actions with disturbing composure, which horrified his accomplices. Larry forced them to remain silent by constantly reminding them of the family ties. After the trial, Jalen was sentenced to 29 years in prison, while Diane received 30 years. The first hearing in Larry's case in December 2021 was declared invalid. The final trial took place in October 2022. The main evidence was the testimony of Diane and Jalen, Larry's mobile phone data, and the testimony of other witnesses. The court found Larry Taylor guilty of the serious crime, theft, and illegal possession of firearms. He was sentenced to 86 years in prison. The prosecution could not prove his involvement in an incident with another woman. However, Amanda's relatives did not believe that everything happened just because of an ordinary attempt to appropriate valuables. The relatives were convinced Amanda's husband was behind it. In their opinion, he had hired these people, and his behavior only confirmed the suspicions. Shortly before the incident, the husband took out a high insurance policy for Amanda, although they had never done that before. He explained this by saying that his wife was expecting their second child, and they wanted to secure themselves in case of complications. After the incident, Dave immediately applied for the payout and received the money. He derived considerable benefit from it and saw nothing unusual in it. Amanda's grieving relatives noticed something strange. The husband did not seem grief-stricken. On the contrary, he used the situation to gain notoriety. Dave began keeping a blog, started a podcast, and created a website called Nothing Was in Vain. He traveled through the country giving lectures, telling about his life and what had happened to his wife, presenting everything as an event with special meaning. The same phrase, "nothing was in vain," he had engraved on Amanda's tombstone. In his blog, Dave described in detail that morning when he found his wife. Many details seemed strange. He referred to their shared house as my house. Also disturbing was his phrasing about the 911 emergency call, as soon as I could. Nobody understood why there was a delay in calling emergency services. Later, it turned out that the delay was indeed considerable. According to his statement to the police, he spent about an hour in the car in front of the house before going inside. Dave explained this by the early hour. Allegedly, he did not want to wake the family and therefore stayed in the car to make phone calls. However, he could not conclusively explain what this long conversation was about. Amanda's relatives noticed a whole series of strange coincidences that morning. In the house was her pet, a large boxer. The neighbors remembered well its unusually loud and persistent barking. Apparently, the dog was trying this way to draw attention to strangers in the house. Its restless barking caused the neighbors to pay attention to what was happening. Many of them also heard strange noises from inside. At this time, Amanda's husband was near the house, but according to his own account, noticed nothing suspicious. He sat in the car sometimes got out and looked through the windows, which made the worried neighbors attentive who were watching the house because of the persistent barking. Amanda's relatives consider his behavior inexplicable. In their opinion, Dave deliberately waited until the unwelcome guests left the house. Another puzzle. Why did such a serious dog as a boxer only bark at the strangers instead of protecting its owner? The family suspects. Dave had locked the dog in another room before leaving, from which it could not escape. When the dog heard suspicious noises, it tried to attract attention by barking until Dave returned and opened the door. It also remains unclear why the unknown persons chose precisely this house. When they saw the large dog, they strangely did not change their minds. They continued their plan, and the dog strangely did not react to them at all. Later, however, they were startled by the sound of an approaching car. Amanda's relatives could find no logical explanation for this. Particular suspicion was aroused by the unusual behavior of the husband. Dave, who was known for his punctuality, suddenly deviated from his usual routine. He woke up as usual at 4:30 but only left at 6 o'clock, although he was normally already at the gym by 5:30. The reason for the half-hour delay remained unknown. His training that day was shorter than usual, but he provided no understandable explanation for it. Amanda's family emphasizes, for an outsider, such details might seem insignificant, but not for Dave, a pedantic perfectionist who is demanding of himself and others and keeps his schedule precise to the minute. Amanda's relatives are confused by the strange circumstances of the incident. They are troubled about why the perpetrators only paid attention to her, although another neighbor also noticed her that day and nothing happened to her. There are doubts about the official version that Amanda woke up early and coincidentally encountered the uninvited guests. Normally, she woke up later and immediately made contact with her parents. But on this day, there was no activity on her social media, and she made no calls. Everything indicated that she was still resting during the break-in to the house. Amanda's relatives suspect that the staging of a property crime was intentionally created to mislead the investigation. The investigators found no other victims of Larry's actions, which called into question the official version of events. When examining the social media of the convicted persons, Amanda's family discovered an unexpected connection. Among their contacts were Dave and some mutual acquaintances. This discovery caused them great concern. According to the relatives, Dave could have known this group of lawbreakers who had already served punishment for similar acts. They suspect that he might have approached them under the pretext of ordinary material enrichment to get help in solving personal problems. In the Blackburn family, there was indeed a tense atmosphere. Rumors circulated about possible infidelity of the husband. Dave showed disrespect toward Amanda, allowed himself rudeness and even physical impact. But she, as the wife of a clergyman, forgave everything. A particularly disturbing signal for the relatives was that Dave started a new family shortly after the sad events. Dave mentions in his blog that he waited a year after losing his wife before thinking about new relationships. Fate brought him together with Christy. who began visiting their congregation in the fall of 2016. During their conversations, an amazing coincidence emerged. Her stepfather lived near the former house of Dave and Amanda. For the deeply religious Dave, this was a sign from heaven, as if fate itself had led Christy into his life. Their friendship developed into a romantic relationship, and after a year they married. But later, unexpected details came to light. Christy's stepfather knew well the three persons whose actions led to the events with Amanda. But the most interesting thing came to light later. The story of how Dave and Christy met was completely different from what they told. They attended the same fitness club, exactly the one where Dave was on Amanda's fateful day. Several people confirmed that they had seen the two together long before the tragedy in the Blackburn family, and apparently there was already a special connection between them at that time. Amanda's relatives believe that therein lies the key to the whole story. In their opinion, Dave, as a deeply religious person, could not allow a divorce. This would have led to condemnation in their congregation. Possibly he sought another way out of the situation that would have allowed him to preserve his reputation and gain financial advantage. Amanda's relatives tried to draw the attention of law enforcement agencies to these facts, but their attempts remained unsuccessful. The investigation was already completed. Others were found guilty, and the reputation of the respected pastor remained spotless.